The Rangers blow a 3-goal lead in the preseason and lose in overtime to the Boston Bruins. Preseason hiccup or cause for concern? We debate.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1386 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers, through their first 5 periods of preseason hockey, everything was A-okay, everything was looking good, and then unfortunately, the third period occurred last night between the Rangers and the Bruins. And to kind of set the stage here for you guys, I want to mention this right at the top of the show. I was all prepared to come on here and talk about all the good things in this game, and we're still going to do that, but I was going to lead with, Gabe Perreault and how good he looked, and he scored another goal, and can he actually make the Rangers out of training camp and maybe just skip the AHL altogether? And we're going to talk about Gavrikov. We were going to talk about him a little bit earlier in the episode as well, and, how well he played and how good he looked and how he seems to fit this Rangers team like a glove, and how he's exactly what they needed. And like I said, we will still get to both of those players, but unfortunately, we have to start with this. The Rangers giving up a 3-goal lead. And to kind of recap everything that happened toward the end of this game, because I know not everybody catches every preseason game, so we'll give you the quick synopsis here. Rangers are up 4-1 in the third period with less than 13 minutes to play in the game. And for the first 2 periods, the Rangers were awesome. It wasn't perfect, but it was very, 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 very good. This team was competing very hard. They were playing with some grit and some tenacity. They were winning 50-50 pucks. They were defending well. They were opportunistic. The rink was tilted in their favor. Pretty much everything went right for the Rangers for the first 40 minutes of this game. And then you get to the third period, and again, 4-1 Rangers with less than 13 minutes to go, and the Rangers are on the power play. So clearly, they're going to put this one away. It's in the bag. They're going to take care of business, and that's not what happened. The Bruins obviously unleash a 3-goal barrage on the Rangers, and they end up tying the game, and they end up winning it in overtime. And here's the real kicker. I mentioned the power play. The first of those 3 goals that the Bruins scored in the third period to ultimately tie the game was a shorthanded goal. And the last of those 3 goals occurred with the goalie pulled for the Bruins and 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining. So they gave up a goal in crunch time as well, did the Rangers. And that's obviously not good. I'm just thankful this was the preseason. That's really the only saving grace here. And there were other extenuating circumstances that we'll talk about in just a second as well. But the fact that this was a preseason game and not a regular season game, and especially not a playoff game, that's the only reason why we're not all absolutely sick right now. Because if that had happened in the regular season, or if that had happened in the playoffs, we're all nauseous, like literally. Like it'd be hard for me to even come on here and do this show if it was a playoff game. The Rangers obviously gave the game away, and that's something that can't happen. And there are extenuating circumstances like I just mentioned a second ago. Yes, it is the preseason. Nobody's going to ever remember this game a couple of weeks from now. Most of the big name players were not playing for the Rangers or the Bruins. And of course, the Rangers were essentially going with their 4th string goalie, Talon Boyko, when all these goals were scored for the Bruins. Although I wouldn't really put most of it on Boyko. It would have been nice if he could have came up with 1 or 2 saves in this sequence, but I don't really think it was his fault. Bottom line, any level of hockey, any situation, can't be losing games when you've got a 3-goal lead with less than 13 minutes to go. And unfortunately, that's what happened to the Rangers just last night. But the Rangers, just to give you guys an idea of the game flow, and those of you that watched it probably know, but they ended up, the Rangers did, with just 14 shots on goal against for the first 2 periods by the Bruins. And at that time, after 2 periods, the Rangers were out shooting the Bruins by a total of 29-14. And every once in a while, you can be in a situation where shots on goal doesn't really tell the story. I think it very much told the story in this game. That will give you an idea, if you missed this game, of the level in which the Rangers were dominating the flow of play. Then in the third period, complete 180. The Bruins outshoot the Rangers 16-7. And then even in overtime, and granted, the Bruins began the overtime with a power play, but they outshot the Bruins 5-1 in the extra time and obviously ended up winning the game. The Rangers basically did this to themselves. I mean, I feel like in the third period, they knew they had the 3-goal lead, and they kind of just turtled and went into a shell and stopped being aggressive on the forecheck, stopped playing with any kind of an edge like they did for the first two periods. They kind of just sat back and figured they could just run out the clock. And obviously, that's just not the way it works in the NHL. It can be difficult, I think, at times when you have a lead in the third period, because the challenge there is how aggressive do we want to be? And how much do we want to focus on defense? And you got to try to find that happy medium. I thought 2 years ago, in what was Peter Laviolette's first season as the Ranger coach, the Rangers, when they were in that situation, did an excellent job of doing just that, finding that happy medium where they were still aggressive, they were still looking to score, but not compromising themselves defensively. And this was not that. This was basically just the Rangers sitting back on their heels and hoping the Bruins don't score and making too many mistakes. And ultimately, of course, the Bruins do end up scoring the 3 goals and sending it into overtime. I want to go ahead and go through some of these goals here and just kind of break down everything that happened. The one that made it 4-2, close it to 4-2, was essentially just a brutal play by Adam Fox. I don't really know how else to say it. The Rangers at the time were actually on the power play, and the Bruins had cleared the puck, and Fox goes back to get it in the Ranger zone. It wasn't shot all the way down the ice. You know, it was kind of not too far past the blue line, but Fox goes back there. He retrieves the puck, and even before the turnover, I swear this is true, I'm thinking like, man, he is being like really casual here, like very lackadaisical and just moving very slow. And then he kind of just stops right in the center of the ice. And the Bruin, Eisman, if I'm saying that right, he steals the puck away from Adam Fox, goes in alone, and scores a goal. That just cannot happen in a situation like that, particularly for a veteran and Norris Trophy winner like Adam Fox. That was not good. Then you had the goal that cut it down to 4-3. You have an extended offensive zone shift for the Bruins. Rangers just can't get the puck. And then Jackson Dorrington is back there, and he kind of just makes a no-look pass to nobody, and it goes right to Eisman, who scores again for the Bruins. It's just not what you want to do with the puck in this situation. That knocked it down to 4-3. And then, of course, the game-tying goal with just 1:05 to go, and the Boston net empty. The puck was along the boards forever, but the Bruins end up winning the 50-50 puck, if you even want to call it that. It really was against the boards for a great amount of time. You get some perimeter passing. Scott Morrow went down to potentially block a shot or a pass in deep, but a quick pass by the Bruins across the top of the crease, a stuffing goal, and just like that, you're 4-4. And then you have a situation where, we mentioned Fox earlier, a veteran making a mistake. We have Sam Carrick. Now, Carrick, he did score a goal in this game, and a very nice goal at that, but he makes a foolish mistake with about 14 seconds to go during a play stoppage, during all the extracurriculars. He takes a penalty. He puts his team at a disadvantage heading into the overtime period, shorthanded, 4-on-3 power play for the Bruins. Now, the Bruins did not score on that power play, but obviously you're down a man to start overtime. It's not ideal, and very unlikely the Rangers would score in that kind of a situation. They did kill it off, but the Bruins scored not too long after that, and just not a good way to end the game if you're the New York Rangers. Like I said, the saving grace here is that it indeed is just the preseason, but I look at a situation like this, and I think, okay, one or two things hopefully is going to happen going forward here. And again, I realize that most of the Ranger regulars, most of the Bruin regulars did not play in this game, but this can go one of two different ways. Does this either establish a really concerning trend for the Rangers where they're giving up leads late in games? Because we don't want that to happen. And while we're on the subject here, the Rangers kind of flirted with disaster a little bit against the Devils. That was where they had the 3-goal lead, 3:30 to go. You get the 5-minute major against Brandon Othman. So now the Devils are going to be on the power play for the rest of the game. The Rangers take another penalty after that. Now it's a 5-on-3. The Devils score. The 5-minute major continues. The Devils had some really good scoring chances in the final couple minutes of that game. And the Rangers did hold them off and win 5-3. But you had that finish in the first game, and you have this disastrous finish in the second game. So at least right now, the Rangers are not finishing games with any real authority. But with all that said, as I mentioned just a second ago, a collapse like this can do one of two things. It can either establish a bad and disturbing trend where you're giving up leads late in games, or this can be a very valuable lesson learned for the young players on this New York Ranger team, who then decide that, okay, we're not going to let that happen again. We're going to close with more authority the next time around. And obviously, as Ranger fans, we all hope that it is the latter. We will see. Time will tell going forward. But in just a second, we're going to shift our attention to some of the good stuff. I do want to talk about Gabe Perreault. I thought he was excellent in this game, score another goal. And hey, does he have a chance to make the opening night roster? We're going to debate that in just a second. All right, we just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because it's got something for you, no matter how you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action is unfolding. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, it is easy, it is the best way to add more energy to every Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much. Ranger season is in full swing. I know it's the preseason, but it's a lot of fun. We got to figure out who's going to make this team and who's going to play with who and what's going to happen going forward. Never too early to establish a trend. So thank you guys for jumping back on board here or just sticking with the podcast throughout the entire offseason and into the regular season as well. But in our next episode, it's actually already recorded. We're going to do best and worst case scenarios for 3 more players on the New York Rangers. We got a defenseman, we got a goalie, and we got a forward. We've got Braden Schneider, Jonathan Quick, and Brett Berard. Going to discuss those 3 players in the next episode. And then, of course, the Rangers going to be back in action in the preseason on Thursday against the Islanders. So definitely looking forward to that and breaking that one down after that game concludes as well. But for right now, let's go ahead and shift the attention to Gabe Perreault. He scores another goal in this game. I've been saying pretty much since the offseason started, we begin to turn the page and look ahead to the 2025-2026 campaign, that my personal preference is for Gabe Perreault to start this upcoming season in the AHL with the Hartford Wolfpack. And I realize a lot of people are going to agree. A lot of people are also going to disagree, especially after the way he's played in these first 2 preseason games here. For right now, I'm still holding firm. I still want that to happen. As I've mentioned in the past, even if we're only talking about like 15 games, 20 games, 25 games with the Wolfpack, I just like the idea of having that little bit of a bridge between college hockey and the NHL. That is quite a jump to go from one to the other. And I know he played 5 games with the Rangers this past season, but I still think some time with the Wolfpack could serve him well. And it's also entirely possible that I'm a little bit gun shy about putting a rookie straight into the NHL, skipping the AHL altogether, because we've seen that with the Rangers in the past, and it hasn't always worked out. In fact, it has not worked out in a couple of different instances. So I'm still a little bit on the side of let's start Gabe in the AHL. By that same token, I'm open-minded, right? If he continues to go out there and play like this and electrify the Rangers on a night in and night out basis, and he earns a roster spot, then by all means, he's earned a roster spot. And if he makes the opening night roster, I think that's going to be great news for the New York Rangers. Because to me, the only way he makes the opening night roster is he's got to play excellent hockey. And he's done that so far. So if he can keep this up throughout the rest of training camp, however many more preseason games in which he'll appear, then more power to him. And, the same thing is also true. Like I mentioned a second ago, you could start him in the AHL, then call him to the NHL. Look, you could start him in the NHL, and if he struggles or just needs to work on a couple more things in a lower pressure setting, then the Wolfpack, they're not going anywhere. They'll still be there. You can send Gabe down if you feel the need to do that at some point during the regular season, then call him back up whenever is necessary. But we'll see how it goes. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation that we're all going to be tracking very, very carefully. Going forward, we're going to be right on top of all of that, I think, for sure. A lot of Ranger fans heavily invested in, what the future holds for Gabe Perreault, the short-term future. Does he start with the Rangers or the Wolfpack? But I just love the way he played in this game. The goal is one thing, and we'll talk about that in a second, but the amount of pressure that he was applying in the offensive zone, I thought was very impressive. He was forechecking, just very active, never stopped buzzing when the Rangers had the puck in the Boston zone. And I think if you're, say you're a fan of the Bruins and you're watching this game, I think for sure this is somebody that probably caught your attention, right? Who's this kid, number 94 out there, buzzing around our offensive zone and giving us all kinds of fits. There was a sequence early in this game in the first period that I absolutely loved from Gabe Perreault. I like this better than the goal. So you've got a situation here where the Rangers, they got the puck in the offensive zone, and Perreault ends up getting a couple of different scoring chances in rapid succession. Wasn't able to score, but obviously the effort was there and came very close on a number of occasions here. Yet a pass in deep from Juuso Parssinen to Gabe Perreault. Perreault was not quite able to stuff it in the short side. He very quickly just tried to kind of, sweep it home there. Wasn't able to do it. The puck bounces away into the corner. Gabe is all over it. He dashes into the corner there. He fishes the puck out of the corner. He comes back around, circled back to the front of the net, takes a really good wrist shot. That's denied. His own rebound goes right to him. He tries to shoot again. That puck too stays out. And there's, kind of a scrum in the crease there at that point. But Gabe obviously came very, very close to scoring there. And I just love that relentless determination that we saw from him on this play. And that was a theme for Gabe throughout this entire game. We know about the skill. We know that it was a big surprise when a player of his skill level fell all the way to the Rangers in the first round of the NHL draft a couple of seasons ago. And I'm happy that it happened. But I think one thing that maybe if you're not totally sold on Gabe Perreault, the reason for that is probably you're a little worried about him not being the biggest guy and not being the most physical player and whatnot, but he does look noticeably bigger. And we talked about this. He added like 15 pounds in the offseason. He looks noticeably bigger than he did during even those 5 games that he played for the Rangers this past season. I think that's certainly going to work to his advantage. And as far as, not playing physical, I mean, it's not going to be his calling card, but Gabe Perreault was out there mixing it up, man. There were a couple of skirmishes during, play stoppages where the goalie froze the puck, where he's in the middle of everything. He's driving his way to the net. He's going into the corner to fight for the pucks. He's fighting off 2 different Bruin defenders when he scores a goal. I mean, there was some grit to Perreault's game in this one, and he might know that as well, that that's the area of his game where he's got to improve because the skill is there. You got to believe Gabe is very well aware of that. And you had the grit too, man. You're going to have a heck of a player. And he's already added some size, which is also very, very encouraging to see. As far as the goal that he scored here, we got to first give props to both Juuso Parssinen and especially Vladislav Gavrikov on this play. Now, we're going to talk about Gavrikov in greater detail in a little bit, and we'll even revisit this play. But the two of them did a great job pressuring the puck carrier in the Bruins zone and eventually, just slightly into the neutral zone as well. The two of them basically, joined forces to cause a turnover. And then the puck goes to Will Cooley. He's got a couple of Bruins, bearing down on him as well in the center of the ice there. But he's able to slip a quick pass ahead to Gabe Perreault to lead him into the offensive zone. Now, Gabe is not behind the Bruins defense at this point. He's got a defenseman in front of him, and I believe a forward also closing in on him at the same time. And it's basically just him. It's basically just Gabe against the Bruins defense. But before they can really converge on him, try to knock him off the puck or, make a play on the puck or whatever, he unleashes a shot going up the left side and just beats the goalie clean. Just a very, very impressive shot right there. And again, two Bruins defenders all over him. There was nowhere really to go for Gabe in terms of, passing options in this situation. He basically took on the Bruins team and won and scored clean here and gave the Rangers a 2-1 lead. So that was excellent as well. He had a situation later in this game when the Rangers were up 4-1. He had a chance to score to make it 5-1, and that probably would have been the clincher. I mean, who's to say for sure the way the Bruins came back in this game and the way the Rangers just didn't play well in the third period, but that probably would have been the clincher, I would say. This was in the second period, and you had Gabe basically in the crease, just a giant scramble, and he was whacking away at it. Had he been able to stuff this puck home, which he almost did, it would have been 5-1. The Bruins were able to keep it out. But that goes back to what I was talking about just a second ago, where we're seeing more gritty, more blue-collar plays from Gabe Perreault. I think that's very, very encouraging. And overall, just did a really nice job. There was a little bit of a flashy play from Perreault not too long after this. I believe it was the very next shift that he was on the ice for. Basically, Gabe gets hit into the boards by Zadorov, and he gets up, he gets the puck, he goes over the blue line, he makes a behind-the-back pass to Brian Hoffman. Hoffman takes the shot, and he is denied. It was a good shot by Hoffman, just a better save by the Bruins netminder. But, I mean, just a great job by Perreault. Again, he gets knocked down here, pops right back up like nothing happened. He was laughing about it, smiling on the bench. So for anybody that thinks that, maybe Gabe Perreault, he might be lacking in the physicality department, look, again, I don't think it's ever going to be his calling card. I don't think it's ever going to be what Gabe Perreault is known for as far as going out there and throwing the body. But he played a tough, gritty, physical game in this, scored a goal, came close to scoring on a couple of other occasions, made some nice passes. I mean, you got to like what you're seeing from Gabe Perreault so far. So very, very encouraged by his performance, especially the physical, gritty aspect of it. In just a second, I'm going to keep everything rolling here. Want to shift our attention to the Rangers prize free agent pickup this offseason, that would, of course, be Vladislav Gavrikov. I thought he had a heck of a start here, too, and we'll break down his performance in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit here about Vladislav Gavrikov in this game. I thought he was very, very good. I thought he was as advertised. And I know there's going to be people that say, oh, it's one preseason game. Let's not go nuts here. But bottom line, I mean, this guy's been in the NHL for a long time. He's a veteran. He's in his late 20s. And when the Rangers were pursuing him in free agency, and all those rumors were breaking that they were going to chase him in free agency, and this is their guy, they're locked in on Vlad Gavrikov, the thing we were hearing about him is that he's just very, very steady in all aspects of the game. Just very consistent, very sure of himself out there, very confident player, always has good positioning, never makes mistakes, smooth skater, very mobile for his size. Literally all of that on full display for Ranger fans around the world in this game last night. There were a couple of times this really impressed me where the puck came back to Gavrikov in the offensive zone at the point, and he didn't have a lot of time and space to maneuver. And yet it felt like every time he anticipated the play, he anticipated receiving the puck and moved the puck to where it needed to be. It's just a little thing. But again, it's one of those things that you notice with somebody like Vladislav Gavrikov. And again, further evidence that he comes to the Rangers as advertised. Very good passing from Gavrikov in this game as well. And I mentioned we were going to revisit the Gabe Perreault goal here and kind of look at it from Vladislav Gavrikov's perspective. We're going to do that right now. Just awesome anticipation by Gavrikov on this goal here. I mentioned earlier that Gavrikov, Parson, they both contributed to this goal, even though they won't get assists on the play because they never actually touch the puck. But you've got a Bruin, trying to leave his zone, the defensive zone for the Bruins, and Gavrikov sees that and he steps up and he bodies him and he knocks him off the puck. It wasn't like a, just bone-crushing, insane hit, open ice hit that we're going to see on highlights for years to come. It wasn't anything like that. But he bodied him, went body to body, knocked him off the puck. The puck comes loose, and that's when Cooley got it and passed it ahead to Gabe Perreault, who took care of the rest, which is a really, really good play by Gavrikov there, playing a physical brand of hockey there, and also anticipating the play. I think that's what you like to see if if you're looking for good things from Vladislav Gavrikov. Just a great all-around play from Gavrikov there. And then, of course, I didn't have this on my bingo card. Not many of you probably did either, but we got a shorthanded goal scored by Gavrikov. That made the score 4-1 in favor of the Rangers in the second period. First of all, we got to really give props to Noah Laba because he made this whole thing happen. And I really want to talk about Laba in greater detail today. We'll save that for a different episode. I don't want to, have it just kind of jammed in here at the end of the episode. But he's been great. You gotta recognize what Noah Laba has done. He looked very good in the two rookie games, and he looked great in these first two preseason games as well, with a goal and 2 assists in those 2 games combined. But the Rangers are shorthanded. Laba's out there killing the penalty. Puck is along the boards. He challenges his guy. The Bruin was kind of, I don't know what he was doing, man. This Bruins player was kind of lost along the boards here, kind of lost sight of the puck and didn't really know where it was. Eventually, kind of got control of it, but by then Laba had converged on him. I think Laba kind of realized that this Bruin player kind of looks lost here, and I'm going to go challenge him along the boards. And he lifts his stick, steals the puck clean, goes away with it through the neutral zone. Now, Laba goes up the right side. And again, keep in mind the Rangers are shorthanded at this point. And he gets the blue line, and I think he was looking to pass to Cooley because by this point, Laba had slowed down a little bit. Cooley was going straight for the net, but Cooley also had 2 Bruins who were basically all over him. So Laba holds onto the puck, doesn't force the pass that in all likelihood would not have connected. Instead, he sees Gavrikov, the trailer, on this play, and he goes back to Gavrikov instead. Gavrikov receives the pass, takes the shot, and scores, and makes it 4-1 in favor of the Rangers. Like I said, did not have Gavrikov shorty on my bingo card. I wanted to check this because I was curious if Gavrikov had ever scored a shorthanded goal in his career. And I know this is the preseason and it won't count for his stats or whatever. He's done it twice in his career. So it's not something that's going to happen all that often, but Gavrikov took advantage of a situation here. He was where he needed to be in terms of receiving the pass from Noah Laba, and he got his chance and he converted. So you got to love that. They also interviewed Gavrikov during the first intermission, and I believe it was John Giannone who was down there, and just asked him some basic questions about coming to the Rangers and what made you want to be here and everything. And Gavrikov, for the most part, gave, pretty basic answers, pretty simple answers. I mean, these guys, it's funny anytime you get these interviews during the intermission, because a lot of times, they're out of breath and they're trying to catch their breath, and they were just on the ice for a grueling shift. And The adrenaline, I'm sure, is still going in some ways. And for Gavrikov, preseason or not, I mean, this is his first game as a New York Ranger in Madison Square Garden. So I'm sure the adrenaline was going for him. But he talked about how Madison Square Garden is an iconic building, and the Rangers were at the top of his list, and he's happy that they were able to get something done and bring him in. He was also asked about playing with Adam Fox and building chemistry there. He talked about, building chemistry together and talking about how they can be good in the offensive zone and the defensive zone. And Gavrikov really put over Adam Fox as being one of the best defensemen in the league. The two of them, I thought, overall mostly played well together in this game. There was one hiccup, I believe it was the first period, where the Rangers are in the defensive zone. There's not too much pressure from the Bruins, but Fox goes around the boards up to the half boards to Gavrikov, and Gavrikov sent a pass back to Fox behind the net, and I don't think Fox was anticipating it. So it kind of went through, the other side behind the net, and Fox had to go run it down. Like I mentioned, I think the Bruins might have been in the middle of a line change here, so Fox was able to easily go corral the puck. So a little bit of a hiccup there, but overall, I thought these two played well together. They moved the puck back and forth between the two of them on a couple of different occasions. Gavrikov during the interview was also asked about Mike Sullivan and talking about how Sullivan, brings a certain standard into the room with him, and how, there's a lot of good, fierce competition during practice. We've been seeing a lot of evidence of that. A couple of incidents where there have been some big hits. A couple of guys have had to leave the ice. Panarin is dealing with an injury right now. It wasn't because of like a big hit or anything like that. I love the fact that the Rangers, while we're talking about this subject, are competing hard at practice, but there have been a few times where I've seen some updates and this guy's down and that guy's down. And it's like, okay, like I get it. Like we got to go here and we got to get ready for the season, but it's also like, all right, let's not get half of our team injured, before the start of the regular season. But Gavrikov seems to love it, playing for Mike Sullivan thus far. And I thought this was interesting too. Gavrikov led all Rangers in time on the ice. He even had more than Adam Fox with 23 minutes, 51 seconds of ice time. Obviously, he had the goal. He was also a +3, 2 shots on goal, and 2 blocked shots. Gavrikov also wore a letter in this game. He was one of the alternate captains for this matchup. That's not going to happen in the regular season, but obviously you've got, not your full complement of star players competing in this game. No Panarin, no Mika, a couple of other guys missing from the lineup as well. But, I know that Sullivan not too long ago mentioned that, the guys with the most experience, NHL experience in the preseason games are going to be the guys that typically wear the letter. So I think that was probably the case here with Gavrikov too, but it's still a nice distinction. Again, his first game at Madison Square Garden, his first game as a member of the New York Rangers, and he's out there wearing a letter. So that had to be a cool moment for him as well. I figure we'll call it there. The only other things I wanted to mention were Kenny Albert and Dave Maloney. I mean, I think they did a great job in this game. I think they're going to do an awesome job going forward. They never really missed a beat. I mean, the two of them have been calling Ranger games for a very long time. The only difference is they've been doing it on the radio. They are now calling games on TV for the Rangers, obviously replacing the legendary Sam Rosen and Joe Micheletti, who were together for, what was the final total there for that duo? I think it was 19 years. I know it was 40 years total for Sam Rosen, but I think it was Sam and Joe for 19 years, if I'm not mistaken. I might be off by, a year or two either way, but you get the idea. Those two were awesome. I don't think, though, that we could have asked for better replacements. And in some ways, you never replace that duo. But in other ways, we've got another really good, really fun duo here. Kenny Albert, I mean, he calls every sport, does an awesome job with all of them. Dave Maloney, he's going to give it to you straight. He's going to call it like it is. So I think we're very, very fortunate that we've got the two of them stepping into the booth. But it was striking not hearing, Sam and Joe, and obviously now being aware that, yeah, we're in a new era of Ranger hockey here, at least when it comes to the announce booth. Also got to mention, really nice video tribute before this game for Eddie Giacomin. He obviously passed away, not too long ago, a couple of days ago, and going to be very, very missed. I saw some comments from some of you that have been watching the Rangers for even longer than I have. Sounds like Eddie Giacomin was basically a fan favorite for everybody everywhere, and he obviously will be missed. But there was a really nice video tribute before this game to Giacomin, and the Rangers going to be wearing on the back of their helmets. Basically, it's going to be Giacomin's helmet decal on the back of their helmets, the goalie mask and the number 1. They're going to be back there for, my understanding is, the entire season. And I think that's certainly a good idea. And Eddie Giacomin's certainly going to be missed. But we'll call it there. We'll see where the Rangers go from here. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.